I didn't see you there. Oh, let's talk about a poker hand. Let's talk about one of the most interesting hands that I played all year, possibly in my entire history of playing poker. Maybe one of the most interesting hands of a stream that's run in a long time. Really a long time. Very good. Over $150,000 with deuce-seven offsuit. So this hand has a bit of a history to it, and there's some weird conditions at play here. So let's just pause it right here, because I have to explain what's going on in the first place, because it is not going to make sense otherwise. So this hand starts with a bit of a unique situation, a very unique situation, actually, which is that there is a bonus if someone wins 3 hands in a row, 2,000 from each player, which will mean roughly 12,000 on top of actually winning the hand, like 6 times 12 if there's 6 players, or 10,000 if there's 10 players in addition to yourself. I believe there's 7 players playing at the moment. And Yoh Viral has won 2 hands in a row. If he wins this last hand with ace high, which is quite a good hand, he can win an additional 12,000 on top. Also at play is a bounty if you win the hand with the deuce-seven offsuit. So both of us have massive incentives to win the hand. If I win it, I get 1,000 from each player. So I get a bonus of like 5,000 or 6,000 on top of this as well. I know that Yoh Viral is very loose, and I don't think he's going to be playing a like fantastic strategy in 4-bet pots. Maybe 3-bet pots will be playing like pretty well. Like he's a pro, he's quite a good player. And I know that he's very combative back to me, but I don't really see what options I have. I could call pre-flop. That's definitely an option. You don't want to 3-bet all deuce-seven combos because there's 16 of them. And if you're trying to win the bonus with all of them, you probably want to be a bit weighted towards value and have a bit more value. And my image is pretty terrible. People know I can 3-bet with anything and just be crazy in general. Yoh Viral definitely knows that. And I've already played a hand with him where he called a hand and showed a 5 of hearts. And there's some other hand where he won the pot somehow, or somehow he showed a hand that was very loose called pre-flop, like 6-3 of hearts or something. So I know his range is very wide, and I have a good idea of roughly how wide it is. So this is a hand where I'll be going into a bit of what the analysis looks like. If you don't really know perfectly what sort of ranges people are playing, and they're not following exactly like GTO Wizard, or it no longer applies because there's weird bonuses at play. We'll start with running the hand off and showing you guys what happens. Pre-flop it. I end up deciding to 3-bet, as I mentioned, with deuce-seven offsuit instead of calling. So I want to take the pot away from him, and I'm hoping that he just doesn't play 3-bet pots super well, and I find some kind of edge that way, because it's hard to play 3-bet pots where both ranges are wide. The fact that he calls is important because I can take out a number of hands in his range. I also think, by the way, another reason why I pick 3-bet is because the stack sizes are a bit awkward to 4-bet, which kind of takes away that option unless he wants to go all in for $100,000. That's very ugly. He doesn't really have the option to 3-bet to like 30 plus K. It's a very unattractive option with a lot of hands. So he does decide to call. I already spoiled that a little bit. And when he decides to call, I can probably take away a lot of his pocket pairs, but I didn't realize it straight away. I think there's really high chance he jams quite a few of them in this spot, because he just has loads of incentive to win the hand. And there's like a 20k bonus on top. He doesn't know it's 20, but it's almost 20 basically what happens if someone wins it. I don't really think he has especially big pairs or hands like ace-queen or ace-king, if I really have to guess. Because again, I think that he's not going to trap. He's probably going to go all in or do some weird 4-bet or whatever it is. Probably just go all in, to be honest, as he actually does later on when he has pocket jacks versus my squeeze. There's a really good chance his range is just really wide. It has loads of suited hands. I know that. That's roughly what I'm thinking about. It probably has like weak Broadway hands like Jack 10 offsuit, almost 100%. I could guess that maybe it has like Jack 9 offsuit too. It's possible anyway. But I need to be thinking more on these kinds of categories with like how wide exactly he's playing. Okay, so then comes the flop of King 3-7. I actually think this is a pretty good flop for me because I don't think he has. I think his ace kings, like I said, have already jammed. He might even jam like king queen suited or things like this. It's not 100%, but I think the king especially is. It's not as good as it usually is, but often it is because people don't have so many king x suited in the ranges. I flop a pair, so that's fantastic, and I have a piece of shit, obviously. So I think, okay, betting's a pretty good option. I get him to fold some hands, like 10-9 offsuit if he has that, or 10-9 of clubs, obviously has to fold. It has no choice there. And even with the bounties, it's just too insane to do anything about it. So I decided to bet small, and I think this protects against a lot of hands and forces him to, or makes it very difficult for him to play back very well against a small bet. I think it's fine. I have a bit of a range advantage, but not much because both of us are wide. And in theory, I actually should have a strong range advantage. And as I mentioned, King 7-3 is on the better end of what my overall range is looking for. I should have a bit more nuts in my range, and a lot of his equity it just has to be denied, to be honest. So he does call, not loving that at all. I have to start putting together a turn strategy of what's going to happen on various different turns. But it's not practical to think too much in detail, but I'm going to have to check a lot of turns or consider turning my hand to bluff, which is a really unattractive option, actually, in general, because from his point of view, I have loads of bluffs, and it's a big pot, and I want to win it, and I don't want him to win it. So I'm going to have to check a lot of turns, basically. And then the turn comes a queen of spades. And I think for a second that bluffing might be a good play. But there's actually a good chance I have the best hand here. It's not really nearly as good of a turn as it looks. What happens is it polarizes the other guy by really a lot. He has lots of flushes. Now remember, he has loads of like suited hands, etc. And I start thinking to myself that actually, I go from this idea of turning my hand into a bluff to just checking and trying to win, go to showdown, because, or maybe even like checking and like turning my hand to a bluff on various rivers, because he can have a flush. That's a realistic thing. And I don't think that I really get him off too many things that are worse by betting, or much equity that's worse. I can even like screw myself by betting and like check folding the river. That would be really a disaster. So I decide, looking at the whole of the possibilities, that check and to take my option on the river as the best way of doing this. And yeah, if he has a king, he's going nowhere in the turn. If he has a queen, I don't think he's going anywhere. If someone is like queen jack of hearts, he's got a better 70 folds, but there's not that many combinations of that. I didn't really think he has many offsuit sevens. I think he has many suited combinations of sevens. I don't beat any of them. They're pretty rare, like 8-7 clubs, things like that. He can have 3x. That's another thing I think can happen. I thought at the time, could have pocket fives, pocket fours, which fold sometimes. I don't think he folds with a spade. So there's a decent amount of combinations of that fold. And the other things that fold are, I have them beat anyway. I could theoretically check call, actually, because he now tends towards being, he might have enough bluffs. If I decide he's got enough bluff with his busted suited hands or ace-10 offsuit type floats, then I could check call. But that's going to be a really ugly option. Fortunately, he did not put me in that spot. He checks back, so that's fantastic news. I can win at showdown, or I can win by turning my hand to a bluff. That's another possibility. So the river comes, and it's the 10 of spades, which is a bit of a disaster, actually, as I think about it more and more. At first, I think, okay, what about turning my hand into a bluff? And then I realize, okay, I'm basically saying I have the ace of spades somehow, or the jack of spades. And I think to myself, how do I really have like jack of spades here? Maybe two jacks with jack of spades makes sense. Queen jack with a jack of spades? No, I probably call that. King jack with a jack of spades? No, I probably call that. Jack 5 offsuit or jack 9? Not really. There are not many jack of spades X that I have that aren't like a flush. I start thinking, okay, what about the ace X of spades? I could have ace king and check the turn with the ace of spades, or aces and check the turn with the king of spades. Ace queen with ace of spades and check. And I think then I have to polarize myself between effectively nuts or nothing. And I think that it's really an unattractive proposition to do this in this kind of spot, because from his point of view, I can have anything anyone can imagine as bluff. And it's just pretty damn hard to actually have the nuts when you think about it. I just don't really have that clean of an image. And I have some showdown value anyway. And I think, oh man, it's just too ridiculous of a spot to take. because it's just not that easy for me to have it, and it just looks like I'm full of shit, and I probably really want to win this pop, blah, blah, blah. Hey guys, before we get into that, just a quick announcement from the Jungleverse. The Jungleverse is a community that gives you the tools that you need to both crush, get support from the right community in order to succeed in poker in your kind of way. In addition to tools that help you to get better at poker, you've got tools that help make your life easier in a difficult world, such as a justice system, rakeback tools, a community that supports you, working together for your best interest. It's designed to help you find your own kind of way for success, and maps to help you find the best games. The Jungleverse is here to help you. Just click the link below and let's all win together. So I decided to check. I know that this spot tends to be wildly overbluffed, and by a lot of players, it depends on who, depends a lot on the situation. There's quite a bit of nuance to these 4 flush boards. So yeah, this is where I'm thinking about it, and yeah, just end up deciding to check. I actually do give a bit of a way of a tell here, and then I'm like sitting there thinking and check. It's a bit of a difficult tell just because it's not really, it shows that I'm thinking about betting, but it doesn't really show the range of the possible hands that I can have. It's possible that I'm thinking about bluffing, which is the case, and potentially turning a hand into a bluff. It doesn't really look like I'm going to check call. And I could potentially be betting, making a thin value bet with like low spade, something along those lines that might make sense. It's one of those sorts of things in this spot. So I do in fact check to Yoh Viral, and he goes into the tank now, and I'm just sitting there hating the situation because it just doesn't look like I'm going to win. It really doesn't look like I'm going to win. Then Rob's getting annoyed. Yeah, this is a really tough spot when you add loads of bounties in the middle, and now you have to decide whether to hang yourself with these damn bluffs or not. I think while he was doing this, it seemed to me that he was probably going to bet. In my head, I'm thinking, okay, what does his bluff range look like, and what does his value range look like? Because you have to determine whether he's value betting with an ace of spades or a jack of spades, and what his size should look like. So he does bet. He bets about pot size, which I actually don't think is correct in the spot. So he's maybe a little bit too much on the polar end here, and I think that I'll get to the fact that in reality, I don't think he quite has enough value. At least if he doesn't have enough spades that are good enough, win the hand enough to value bet. Like if he can value bet with like 6 of spades, then maybe he can get away with this. But it's actually hard to have that, which I'm going to get to in a second. Okay, so here I'm starting to count all the possible different combinations of bluffs, because actually there's a lot more than it may appear, and I count a lot of the flush draws as well. So I'm thinking to myself, which ace x spades, which jack x spades, etc., which nut flush draws that he checks back on the turn he may have. I decide he probably doesn't have ace king. He might have ace queen. At least at this time I counted ace queen. Ace of spades queen. We'll check the turn almost for sure. So he's got all those combos. He's got 3 of those. I don't give him actually ace jack offsuit and ace 10. Not because he doesn't have them on the whole in his range, but because he's almost like 100% to bet the turn with such combinations. I don't give him ace jack or ace 10 with the ace of spades in his range, not because he doesn't have that overall in what he's got, but because I think there's a really high chance that he just bets the turn and doesn't check it in the spot. It's just such an obvious bluff spot that I think he's just going to take it. He could potentially have ace 9. For sure he's not folding ace 9 or ace 8 to be pre-flop with ace of spades. These would have been a lot of combos, but I just think there's a high chance they go on the turn. If I'm really being precise, probably what I'll do is give him 20 to 25% of those. And that will be a bit of math. It'll be something like 5 times 3 times 20%. It would be about 3 combos or so. I start counting the nut flushes, and I start giving him quite a few of those, actually. I think there's a pretty good chance he slow plays those. That is, the made nut flushes on the turn. So we have ace 2, we have ace 3, we have ace 4, we have ace 5, ace 2, ace 3, ace 4, ace 5, ace 6, ace 7, or not ace 7, ace 8, or no, excuse me, ace 8, we have ace 9, and we don't have ace 10. He might jam ace jack suited, but you know what, we'll give him that anyway. That's 8 combinations. It's roughly what I counted as I was talking. And he probably doesn't have 100% of those, if we're really honest, but let's be generous and give him something like 6 combinations. If we're counting now, we count something like 3 plus 6 plus like another 3 value bets. This is roughly what's going on in my mind at the time. And we now need to count really the Jack of Spades type hands. He doesn't have Jack pretty much ever, but he can have Queen Jack, he can have King Jack, he can have 10 Jack, but he is very, very likely to bet it on the turn again. So it's most likely Jack X hands. I mean, I guess he could have like Jack 8 or Jack 9, and it's most likely Jack X hands are those sorts of things. I don't think I counted Jack 8 or Jack 9. I don't think I really need to because, again, probably bets him on the turn. But Queen Jack and King Jack, if he universally checks them on the turn, are another 6 combos. And by the way, guys, the way you count this is there's 3 offsuit kings and there's 1 Jack of Spades, or there's 3 offsuit queens and 1 Jack of Spades, and that's how you count this. That would be 2 times 3, right? So we had 12 and now we have 18 combinations, and I need to be getting a price that's greater than 2 to 1, right? Because he's bet about pot size and there's about 20k money on the side, roughly, whether I win or lose. Like, he doesn't know that I have an additional 6k essentially if I win because of the deuce-seven thing. I also have all the bragging rights in the world if I win too. We can't forget all that. So I have additional bragging rights equity plus glory equity of sorts if I do win. So good factors, even if it's like break even, it makes sense to call for these kinds of reasons. And we're really being serious. And I also deny the fact that I guess from my perspective, actually, it's like plus 8k if I win, because I win the 6k plus I win the 2 more. I don't pay the 2,000 to him, and I deny him the 12k. So it's a little bit more than 2 to 1 that I need. So he's got to come up with only 9 combinations of bluffs for his play to be plus CV or break-even EV, basically. Actually, he needs even less than that. He needs basically 8 combinations of bluffs total in order for him to be break-even with this, or else he's bluffing too much. Because now the price is better than 2 to 1 if he's bluffing. If he has 10 combinations of bluffs, guess what? He's only got 18 combinations of value. And if that's the case, like, he's not value betting enough because the price is wrong. Now, if he starts having hands like 8-9 of spades, or 8-6 of spades, or somehow 9s with a 9 of spades, or he turns up with bluffs that beat me, that was actually one of my biggest concerns. If he turned up with 8-7 of clubs and beat me, this is a disaster. Like, now he can have a lot more value bets, rather. They're not, he thought he was bluffing, but he's value betting, actually. One combination, by the way, I forgot about was Jack 9 of spades. He can have that. So actually, he's got 19 combos of true value, and not counting 9 of spades, 8 of spades type things. I think you can value bet those, actually, if you really think about it. I think it's quite hard for me to have the 8 or 9 of spades. I don't know if it really does for pot size. So not a great chance. And so, yeah, actually the biggest concern is if he turns up really with worse. And does he have enough bluffs? Let's get into the not enough bluffs first. There's a pretty good chance he turns a 3x into a bluff. What kind of 3x's does he have? We know he's got as wide as 6-3 suited. There's a good chance he's got 6-4 suited. Well, he does have 6-4 suited 100%. There's a good chance he's got 3-2 suited. There's a good chance he's got 3-4 suited, 3-5 suited, like almost 100%. Ace-3 suited. He can have, as I mentioned, the 6-4, 6-5 busted gut shots. He should be able to have some busted ace highs that miss, or other busted kinds of backdoors, such as 8-6 suited of hearts or 8-9 suited of hearts, like hands like this. There's also Jack 8 of hearts is another one. Jack 6 of hearts, perhaps. Jack 5 of hearts. Let's start doing a little bit of math. Now, remember, we only need to get to the number of 10 plus, not considering the fact that he may turn other hands that are better than me into bluffs. So let's consider non-3x combos first. So there's 6-4, there's 6-5, and 5-4. There's actually 9 combinations of those alone. Why? Because there's 4 combinations of each suited hand, and one of those is a flush, right? He can have 6-5 of spades, but all the other ones are busted, and there's 9 combinations. However, we don't know that he's betting all those on the river. He might have bet a lot of them on the turn. So I'm going to do something like give him half of those combos. And now we need to find basically a bunch more. And let's count 8-6 of hearts, ace-9 of hearts, ace-8 of hearts, ace-6 of hearts, ace-5 of hearts. That's 5 more already. Ace-2 of hearts, I don't think he folds. A jack-5 of hearts potentially. And jack-6 of hearts or jack-8 of hearts. Either way, we can pretty clearly get to the point of break even, roughly. Now, if he starts having things like ace-9 of clubs, etc., which I think people do actually have sometimes, or ace-6 of clubs, ace-5 of clubs, I don't think he's like real keen on folding those, to be honest. I think he does jam some ace-5 suited as well. It's really hard to say, but we're getting into the realm where we know his range is really wide, and he's going to have a bit more combos than you might expect, which basically means that he's going to turn up with... For the most part, it usually means that people turn up with more bluffs than you may expect. So I'm going to roughly the analysis of what I was thinking of at the time. I don't really ascribe the precise fractions of what I gave his bluff combinations. I didn't count that precisely, but that's what this analysis would look like. Actually, the biggest factor that made me call, I was about to 50-50 it, and the final thing that made me call was it was actually something that Patrick Howard, the creator of Mobius Poker, told me, which is that basically on these 4 flush boards, on a lot of different ways that it runs out, a lot of the time people just find some kind of strange ways of bluffing, and they just have more bluffs than you expect. And matter of fact, this is what hung me against one of his students. I had some strange bluff against the guy. I put a lot of pressure in, and he just called me with some nonsense bluff catcher. And sure enough, I was bluffing too much. And somehow, even though it was an obscure spot, and because of remembering that from him, I came full circle, and I used that against somebody else for an even bigger pot. So that was the ultimate deciding factor between flipping a coin or just straight up calling. The biggest issue, of course, with calling is that he just turns up with like 6-7 of clubs or 6-7 of diamonds. I lose that, and that would have been like the real disaster. But if we start doing that, now we have to add like more value bets essentially, where he's got like up to, you know, like 15 more value bets. Now I've got like a real problem. So I finally call, and he shows me the ace-3 offsuit, which really opens up my eyes and makes me realize he's actually got like way more combos than I thought, as we discussed. So he might even have like 3x offsuit combos. Hopefully not turn 7x offsuit combos into bluffs that he presumably has. I'm sure he's got ace-7 offsuit. There's a really good chance 9-7 offsuit. Why not? And it does mean that he's got quite a few more bluffs, because now he could potentially have like ace-4, ace-5, ace-6 with just no backdoor, that kind of stuff. Also has ace-8, potentially ace-9. That's quite a few combos. Like just once you start adding a bunch more, the number of combos just starts really adding up, where if you do bluff too much, you get too fast in the unprofitable zone. And just have like loads of bluffs. Not to mention all the 3x combos, which I didn't really consider into the possible bluffs, at least, where I wasn't really sure if he's going to turn 3x into a bluff. But if I started considering those, I'd basically do something like match them against the potential 7x combinations of bluffs. But if we do get into the 3x combos, there's quite a few bluffs, because now it will be 2 times the 3x if we're considering the suited hands. So, for example, 3-2 suited, which there's a really high chance he has, would be 3-2 of clubs and 3-2 of diamonds, but there's no 3-2 of hearts possible. There's no 3-2 of spades and a flush, right? If he has ace-3, then he's actually got 12 combinations total. So he's got 3 times 4, right? So 3 threes, 4 aces. Now, 3 of those combinations have the ace of spades in them, and may or may not bet the turn. I'm gonna guess he probably checks the turns. So he's actually got 3 ace-3 with the 3 of spades and 3 ace-3 with the ace of spades. So he's actually got 6 ace-3 offsuit type combinations. And if we start adding more ace-x offsuits, then it becomes 6 plus 6 plus 6, etc. for ace-8 and ace-9, etc. Looking at more 3x combos, you can have 3-5, you can have 6-3, you can have jack-3, you can have 9-3, you can have 8-3 maybe. We don't really know. There's a good chance he's got jack-3. Basically, not terribly hard to turn up loads of bluffs. And this is pretty much what the general thought process looks like. Fortunately for me, I called and got all the glory and the money. one of the best possible situations. I managed to check call instead of bluff it off as well, and just get him to fold with worse. Yay for me! My team and I thought it might be a funny idea to invite him for a collab on this video, but I thought that because usually people are kind of annoyed when everything goes perfectly against them and they get demolished in a hand, they tend to be a little bit bitter afterwards, and they certainly don't want to like make a massive YouTube video about it. But thinking about it another way, as one of my team members described it, you can either just lose the $100,000, or you can lose the $100,000 and also make a viral video potentially, or get more content and more viewers. I'm not the one to make that decision, but I'm certainly not going to press it on anybody. And I'm just happy to win and happy to be on the best side of the YouTube video, which I obviously unbiasedly selected out of all the other ones. I think now would be a good time for a flute solo. All right, guys, I showed you why I did what I done. And yeah, we deuce-seven offsuit. Learn to play it like the pros. Thanks for watching.